Welcome to the gardens on Spring Creek, the City of Fort Collins Community Botanic Garden. Through an important partnership with the City of Fort Collins, we offer 12 acres of carefully curated gardens that are an amazing place to come with your family or on your own to rest, to heal, to celebrate, to connect with nature, to explore, to learn, and to just be inspired. Whether you're watching the bees in our children's garden or getting up close to a zebra longwing in our North American butterfly house, there are ample opportunities for connection. Another important part of the mission of the Gardens on Spring Creek is to inspire stewardship through horticulture. Nowhere is that more relevant and tangible than here in our Garden of Eden. This 3/4 acre food garden donates thousands of pounds of produce every year to our Larimer County Food Bank through the Planet Forward program. All our gardens aim to inspire plant lovers to think about the impact of what they're planting. It may be for beauty, for pollinators, for sustainability, or to flourish in our daunting Colorado seasons. A great example of that is our Undaunted garden. We have Lauren Springer, the garden's designer and horticulturist, here to tell us about creating a regionally resonant garden.
This 3/4 acre garden here is my area. It's called the Undaunted Garden, basically named after my first book. Undaunted being all about the fact that it's kind of hard to grow plants in our soil and our climate, and using plants here and showcasing plants here in beautiful ways, plants that can take our climate and can tolerate our soils and thrive. So it's all about low water plants, about plants that can stand heavy clay soils, high pH, super cold winters, dry cold winters. We don't get dependable snow cover. And also sometimes brutally hot summers, hail, all kinds of things. Fires this year, a lot of pollution from the fires. And still have a garden that's full of plants that are doing well, diverse, and attracting lots of pollinators, many natives here. It's about 60% native and 40% plants that are adapted to our region, many from South Africa, from the Mediterranean, Central Asia, areas that similarly have difficult soils and challenging climates. This garden here, the chaparral garden, is really actually, in my sense, I think the most useful and beautiful for our climates. It's very low maintenance because the shrubs and these long-lived perennials need very little care once they're established. And it has a lot of texture. And our textures out here and our colors out here are different than in the Midwest or on the coasts. It's a lot more silver, gray-green, not this lush green look. And the textures aren't as bold and as lush. They're finer textured, scruffier looking, and they play with light and wind really beautifully. Lots of grasses, fine textured things like this rabbit brush, and silver plants like that Artemisia right here. Those kinds of plants are really the cornerstones of a chaparral garden. And there are a lot of bulbs in this garden, which give you a lot of spring color, and then they die down, and then you have these kinds of plants to carry the rest of the season and on in through the winter. So this is the smallest section of the Undaunted garden, but in some ways it's probably the most exciting. It is at this point in time the largest collection of winter hardy cacti showcased in an outdoor garden setting in the United States. And there is at least 36 different species of cacti here and over 400 individual plants, as well as many companion plants with them. They're long-lived, they play with the sun, their spines, their flowers are translucent, so when you have backlighting in the early morning or late afternoon, they actually glow like stained glass. And they have so many interesting forms, and they really are living sculpture. And that said, if you only have cacti in a garden, they can look a little bit plastic because they are so bold and sculptural. And they can look a little bit mean because all you see is all this armature, all these spines. So it's important to mix in other plants to soften them and make them look like they would look in nature, where they have lots of different companions. So there's almost as many companion plants in here as there are cacti. And that's really the best effect here, is to have that juxtaposition of these very bold and spiny, very self-important looking plants, and then some softer textures, and also plants that bloom at different times. Cacti have gorgeous flowers. They come in all colors but blue, and they're very large in most cases and translucent, and pollinators love them, but they bloom for a very short period of time. So if you want color in here, except for in late spring and early summer when the cacti are blooming, you've got to introduce some other companion plants for that kind of blossom color. The other thing to think about when you're gardening with cacti and when you're creating a cactus garden is to think about incorporating rock. Because in nature they grow a lot of times in very stony parts of the desert. They like to have rock mulch around them. That's what they're used to in the desert. That's the kind of things that are covering the soil in the desert. It's not bark mulch, it's not pieces of wood or compost, it's little pieces of rock. And the other thing is that stone helps warm the soil, it helps reflect heat on the cacti, and here in Colorado, they want a little more heat than we sometimes can give them. So some of these are native to the Southwest, further south and further west. Many from New Mexico and Arizona, and some even as far down as northern Mexico. And so if we can increase that heat and also protect their roots in the winter a little bit with these rocks, the larger rocks, and with the rock mulch, we make them much happier. And they also look really good with the rocks. So I would highly recommend using rocks with your cacti.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We explored, we learned, you saw a little bit about who we are, and we hope to see you soon at the Gardens on Spring Creek.